It was the morning of my 65th birthday when I found an envelope slipped beneath my door. No handwriting, no card, just a short printed note that said, "Pack warm. The boat leaves Friday at 10 a.m. It was signed simply, Ethan. My son. I hadn't heard from him in almost 4 years. No birthday calls, no Christmas greetings, not even a short message when I was hospitalized last winter. So, when I saw that letter, I didn't know whether to feel happy or afraid. The toast on my plate went untouched that morning. The coffee grew cold as I sat staring at that note. A part of me wanted to believe it meant something good, that maybe Ethan was trying to reconnect. But another part of me, the one that had learned to live quietly with disappointment, whispered caution. Still, hope is a stubborn thing. 2 days later, I stood on the pier at Charleston Harbor with my small suitcase and a scarf wrapped tight around my neck. The ship Ethan had arranged wasn't one of those glamorous ocean liners, just a modest local cruise, maybe 50 passengers in total. The kind of place where everyone smiles politely but keeps to themselves. Then I saw him. Ethan stood at the boarding ramp, smiling like the years between us had never existed. His wife, Clara, was beside him, graceful as ever, but with that faintly distant look she'd always carried. She greeted me with a half hug, the kind people give when they want to look kind but don't want to be touched. The room they had prepared for me was cozy, far more thoughtful than I expected. Fresh flowers, my favorite novels stacked on the nightstand, even an old photo of us framed on the dresser. Someone had remembered the small details I loved. That night, we dined together in the ship's restaurant. Ethan sat to my right, Clara to my left. The air smelled of salt and citrus. Soft music played, and for the first time in a long while, it almost felt like family again. Clara poured me a cup of chamomile tea before I could ask for water. Ethan cut my salmon into smaller bites, saying I shouldn't strain my wrist. It was sweet, too sweet, perhaps. The kind of careful attention that feels rehearsed. They asked about my little bookstore back home, the Ink Lantern, about the reading nights I hosted for seniors, and even about my volunteer shifts at the literacy center. They listened, or at least pretended well. I laughed at one of Ethan's stories about his new software business, though I barely understood half of it. Later that night, I stepped out onto the small balcony attached to my cabin. The sea was calm, silver under the moonlight. For the first time in years, I felt something that resembled peace. Maybe he had changed. Maybe this trip truly was a gesture of love. But as I leaned on the railing, a strange thought crept in. It wasn't a sound or a sight, just a quiet sense that something in the air was off. Like the hush that comes before a storm. When I went to bed, I told myself I was being silly. Old age makes the mind restless, I thought. Yet my sleep that night was uneasy. I dreamt of waves too high and tea that tasted wrong. In the morning, the sun glimmered through the curtains, and for a moment, the unease faded. Ethan greeted me with a cheerful happy birthday again, Mom, and Clara smiled with the grace of someone playing a part. Still, the silence between their words lingered like a chill under warm light. And though everything looked perfect, the breakfast, the laughter, the gentle rocking of the ship, something deep within me stayed alert. Because sometimes, the most dangerous moments are the ones that pretend to be safe. I didn't know it then, but that calm morning would be the last time I ever drank tea without hesitation. Because on the second night of that cruise, the sweetness turned bitter and the truth began to surface. The second morning began beautifully, sunlight spilling through the curtains, waves soft against the hull, the air clean and salt-sweet. But something in me felt different. My body was heavy, my chest tight, as though I'd carried something through the night. I brushed it off as age or nerves. Maybe the sea air was too thick. Still, my reflection startled me, my skin looked pale, my eyes dull. You're just tired, I told myself. Breakfast was served in a smaller lounge that morning. Ethan wasn't there yet, But Clara was already seated, elegant as always in a cream-colored dress. She smiled warmly. "I ordered you tea," she said. "A special blend from Savannah. Good for the nerves." The cup steamed, smelling faintly of mint and something else, something earthy and sharp. I took a small sip. It tasted slightly metallic, though faint enough to ignore. Clara chatted about how cruises help families reconnect, about slowing down and cherishing what matters. Her tone was calm, too practiced. She asked, almost casually, if I still took my blood pressure medication. I nodded, pretending not to notice how her eyes darted briefly to her phone. Later that day, Ethan joined us for lunch, cheerful and talkative, speaking about some new business venture. He poured me lemonade, insisting it was fresh. It tasted off. "I'll stick to water," I said softly. Clara quickly offered a bottled one from her tote. "I brought this for you," she said, smiling too fast. That evening, the ship held a small dinner under candlelight. I wasn't hungry. I picked at my food, pretending to eat. When dessert came, Clara lifted a teapot. "Different blend tonight, lavender and chamomile, it'll help digestion." Her hands were steady, but her eyes weren't. I let her pour, but I didn't drink. That night, the unease grew stronger. My hands trembled. My heart fluttered. My stomach ached. I blamed the sea. But a voice deep inside whispered that it wasn't seasickness, it was something else. At the next dinner, I noticed a young waitress watching our table. Every time Clara refilled my glass, the girl's expression tightened. When I returned from the restroom, I found a note tucked beneath my napkin, small, torn, written in shaky ink. "Call 911. There's something in your tea." For a second, everything froze. My hands went cold. I slipped the note into my purse and smiled as if nothing had changed. Across the table, Ethan scrolled through his phone. Clara tilted her head and asked, "You're quiet tonight, feeling all right?" "I'm fine," I said, forcing a smile. She ordered me another cup of tea. The scent hit me before the steam did, sweet, but metallic. I didn't drink it. That night, I locked my cabin door and sat under the lamp rereading that tiny note until the letters blurred. Someone knew. Someone was trying to save me. And fear, for the first time, became clarity. The next morning, I decided to stop pretending. Because now I knew the truth, someone I loved wanted me gone. And I'd need to stay 2 steps ahead to survive. Sleep didn't come that night. Every creak of the ship sounded like footsteps. By dawn, I was exhausted but alert. The fog outside rolled low across the sea, hiding everything beyond the railing. I sat on my balcony, staring at the folded note. Someone had risked warning me. Later that morning, I went to the cafe instead of the main dining hall. I sat in a corner seat facing the entrance. The same waitress appeared, nervous eyes, name tag, Nora. She approached quietly, clearing nearby tables, then leaned close and whispered, "Don't drink anything they give you." Then she slipped another folded note under my saucer and hurried off. It said, "Drug name, dioxin. Mimics heart failure. Get blood test soon." The word chilled me. I remembered that drug from years ago, a quiet killer. Moments later, my door opened. Ethan stepped in, cheerful as ever. "Mom, you missed breakfast. Feeling okay?" I nodded. "Just tired." He smiled too easily. "Clara and I have been looking into senior living options. You'd love it, quiet place in Sarasota. We can help manage everything." He meant it kindly, or pretended to. But my instincts screamed danger. When he left, I locked the door and shoved a chair under the handle. Then I began to write times, symptoms, meals, every strange thing since the cruise began. I had to keep a record. That afternoon, another note slid under my door. Room 212. Midnight. I hesitated, then decided to go. At 11:30, I slipped out, my footsteps soft against the carpet. The ship's hallway hummed faintly with the engine. When I knocked on 212, the door cracked open. Nora stood there, eyes tired but determined. She pulled me inside. "You need to see this," she whispered, handing me a manila envelope. Inside were 3 photos, grainy but clear enough. Clara pouring something into a teacup, Ethan holding a pharmacy bag, and someone slipping an envelope under my door. I couldn't speak. "Someone in security helped me," she said. "He saw too much to stay quiet." Then she handed me a small voice recorder. "Keep this. If you can't call for help, record them." I thanked her with my eyes. When I returned to my cabin, fear turned into focus. They didn't know I knew. That meant I still had time to fight back. From that night on, it stopped being a family trip, it became a quiet war. Because when truth surfaces, even calm waters can turn deadly. Every move after that was deliberate. I spoke gently, smiled often, but trusted nothing. The next morning, Ethan knocked on my door with breakfast. "You skipped yesterday," he said, smiling. He waited for me to eat. I didn't. I poured the orange juice into the sink after he left. When the ship docked at a small harbor, most passengers disembarked. I used that chance to sneak to the lower deck. Behind a laundry panel, just as Nora had told me, I found a prepaid phone and another note. "Lieutenant Harris. Legal officer. Trust him." That evening, Clara came by, all grace and perfume. "You've been distant," she said, handing me a gift bag with a silk scarf. Then her tone shifted. "We just want to help you sort things, finances, property, the house. You shouldn't have to worry." She handed me an envelope. "Just drafts," she said lightly. After she left, I opened it. Power of attorney. Estate transfers. All with sticky notes marking where I'd need to sign. I placed them under my notebook evidence. That night, I joined them for dinner, recorder running quietly in my pocket. Clara poured tea again. Ethan smiled too easily. I asked about the envelope. "Just estate planning," Ethan said. "You deserve peace." I nodded calmly, pretending to trust. Later that night, Nora met me near the crew stairs, handing me a flash drive. "Security footage," she said. "It's not everything, but it's enough." Back in my room, I hid the drive beneath my toiletries. My heart didn't race anymore. It beat steady, focused. This wasn't fear now, it was proof. By sunrise, I had evidence, witnesses, and a plan. Justice was close, but it would cost me the peace I once knew. The ocean outside looked calm, but I knew what hid beneath. I dressed neatly, gathered everything, flash drive, notes, photos, fake documents, and met Lieutenant Harris, the ship's legal officer. I told him everything, steady and factual. He listened without interrupting, then said, "You've done the right thing." He took the evidence to security and promised to contact my attorney. Later, a crew member approached Ethan and Clara during lunch. "The captain needs a word," he said politely. They smiled too quickly, then disappeared below deck. That evening, Harris confirmed they were being questioned separately and confined to their cabins. When the ship held a farewell reception, I asked to speak. I thanked the staff, then said, "Sometimes, courage doesn't shout. Sometimes, it whispers the truth when silence would be safer." Then I called Nora to the front and handed her an envelope, a scholarship I'd arranged through a literacy foundation. Her hands trembled. She hugged me tight. Across the room, Ethan and Clara stood frozen, their expressions unreadable. When we docked at Charleston 2 days later, I stepped off the ship without looking back. 3 weeks later, I sat in my attorney's office, revising every document. Ethan and Clara's names vanished from all records. My bookstore, the Ink Lantern, would go to a community trust after I was gone. That night, I went home, brewed real mint tea, and sat in silence that finally felt safe. Weeks later, their lawyer sent a letter threatening to contest my estate. My attorney laughed softly and replied with evidence. The case was dropped within a month. Months passed. The bookstore bloomed again, poetry nights, soft laughter, candlelight. Nora visited once, bringing a jar of handmade tea labeled safe and hers. We drank it quietly. Sometimes, I still think of that ship, the hum of engines, the gleam of silver cups, and the moment I chose not to drink. I didn't just survive poison. I survived forgetting who I was. Now, I live as the woman who never drank the tea. You outlived the poison. Now live like you never tasted it. Because sometimes, survival isn't loud, it's a quiet decision that saves your life. Trust carefully, love deeply, and never ignore the voice that whispers, something's wrong. Share this story, it might protect someone you love.